All right, so hi team, Seven here with a review into Solo. Now, look, most people had probably, you've already seen a review for it or whatever. It's a bit of old news, but I had someone specifically ask for it, Hendrik Fromhold. So thanks, Hendrik. I've been meaning to put out the review for a while, but just hadn't gotten around to it. I had actually watched Solo at the midnight screening, and at the time I was like, yeah, excellent. It was really good movie. It was a good Star Wars movie, and I didn't feel that I needed to do an immediate public service announcement in the same way that The Last Jedi rustled everybody's jimmies. So yeah, and I thought I'd watch Solo again today at a quieter time. Went and saw it. There was probably about 20 people in the theatre. And actually, I think I enjoyed it more the second time around. The first time was fine. Second time was just like, yeah, a little bit better. So, without further ado, let's just kick off and see how we go. Now, look, there's spoilers all over the place, so don't cry if you find out something you didn't need to know. So yeah, why Solo is excellent. That's the word. All right, so we kick off with no traditional crawl, in which the opening information is about hyperfuel, which sort of made me come out in a rash. I'm like, oh heck, it's not going to be about fuel again, and how crime syndicates are, powerful forces in the galaxy. It also mentions about a young man who is living in a sort of underworld life on Corellia under the watchful eye of a lady called Lady Proxima, who is not a lady. We first meet Han driving a stolen vehicle. He's hastily returning back to Lady Proxima's compound after a deal gone wrong. He meets Kira, his love interest, and they quickly action up their, up until now, fairly theoretical plan to escape the planet while giving Lady Proxima's enforcers the slip. They assume that, once they can bribe their way off-world, they will travel the galaxy and live happily ever after. I mean, I think everybody's been sucked into that one. However, in their rush to get out, things go pear-shaped, and Han and Kira are separated. Kira is captured and just sort of disappears, and Han, with rapidly diminishing options, decides to join the Imperial Navy as a pilot, and he gets his last name, Solo, thanks to the recruitment officer, seeing he is travelling by himself. So, you're Han Solo. Okay, almost happens like that. Fast forward a few years later, and we get probably what is the closest thing to a big budget Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard movie you'll ever see, complete with commissars, mud, pew pew, and lots of people dying, and last fire and stuff like that. So Han, being kicked out of the academy for not being able to follow orders, has been shoved into the infantry, and he finds himself in the mud and the blood of, I think it's planet Mimban, Mimban. So he tags along with some other soldiers, but these soldiers seem to have different goals from the main army. Eventually, he realizes that the squad is actually a group of thieves trying to pinch a shuttle, and as he sees like it's a way out, that he tries to befriend them, and he's turned down by the leader. The leader's name's Tobias Beckett. Further, he's labelled a deserter and is thrown into a good old muddy cage to be fed to the beast. That lurks within. The beast ends up being a very muddy and cranky Chewbacca, who proceeds to beat pretty much the living stuffing out of Han, and I mean Han gives it as good as he takes it, bites and kicks and whatever. Anyway, they realise that they've got more in common once Han outlines a plan to escape in Schoolboy Wookiee. Chewie and Han sort of then try and get aboard the shuttle that Beckett and his crew have pinched, and they're about to take off without them because they weren't really interested in having them. But one thing leads to another, and they're like, okay, well, we could deal with some fresh meat. And so Chewie and Han join Beckett and the crew. So they learn that the shuttle is going basically over to steal a container of hyperfuel, which in this instance is called coaxium. I had a look for it, and I think they've just made it up for Solo. But anyway, so it's called coaxium, it's hyperfuel. And this shipment of coaxium is on a moving train, an armoured train that's guarded and all that sort of stuff. Initially, the heist goes pretty well, but at the last minute, Enfys Nest, who's competing villain, in the trailers you probably would have seen Enfys as the person wearing the helmet that looks like a Gundam helmet. And yeah, basically because they're fighting over the coaxium, it gets destroyed and neither of them get to have it. So Beckett ends up in the process losing 2 crew, his lover, Stanley Newton, and his pilot, I can't remember the pilot's name, an alien, and resigns himself to explain to his boss, who's called Dryden Voss, I think, how the plan failed. And Beckett's like, well, I'm going to either get punished or I'm going to get killed, but, I'll have to pay them back somehow. Anyway, Han and Chewie decide there seems to be enough of a chance to actually get some money out of working for a crime lord, so they join Beckett when he meets Voss. It's at this point that Han runs into Kira, looking a million times better than when he first saw her, and she's been working for Voss for quite some time as a fellow member of the Crimson Dawn Syndicate, but her relationship to Voss is unclear. While she's happy to see Han, it's pretty clear that there are definitely walls up, and it's just that thing of, well, it was all in the past now, and please don't kiss me in public. Voss decides that Beckett's probably worth a second chance, especially with Han and Chewie nearby, and he sends Kira along with the group so that they don't stuff up, or if they do stuff up, she can kill them. What else happens? They need a ship. Because they have a pilot in Han, just ask him. And so they need to go and see a guy that Kira knows, who happens to be Lando Calrissian, played by Donald Glover. So you first see Lando in his cape, playing cards. Han loses to Lando, and this intro really doesn't actually mean anything, because Beckett and Kira managed to pitch their plan to him anyway, and he's a fairly willing participant. He brings his ship, the Millennium Falcon, and his droid L3. They make their way to Kessel via the Maelstrom, which is this big nebulous cloud that only appears to have a single safe path through the much larger asteroid belt sort of surrounding it. Posing as slaves, Han and Chewie sort of are taken underground, while Beckett and Kira and L3 quickly make their way up to the control room and the usual sort of thing, subdue the guards, kill the baddies. L3 decides at this point that she's going to free all the droids and the slaves, which creates total chaos for everybody else. In the madness, Han is still trying to load these unprocessed coaxium cylinders, which weigh a ton, and Chewie's off on a quest to go and save some other Wookiees that may or may not be his family. So eventually, with the captured Wookiees' help, or the recently freed Wookiees' help, and Chewie's help, Han managed to get all the heavy coaxium up out of the guts of the spice mines. L3 ends up getting shot, mostly destroyed. Lando takes one to the arm, but eventually they manage to escape. It was pretty good escape. A Star Destroyer confronts them in the Maelstrom, which is that stuff you've probably seen from the trailer. It looks really cool. And then Han decides to head out. Instead of going on the only single safe route, he decides to make a quick exit out into the Maelstrom proper, where there's these massive asteroids and bits of planet and stuff like that, all just rotating around and crashing into each other. So pursued by a TIE fighter, and now the balls on the TIE fighter pilot, considering TIEs don't have any shields, were pretty huge. He died. But anyway, so eventually, through a course of events, L3's memory bank, which is supposed to be the best navigational computer in the universe, is uploaded into the Falcon, and as a result, they managed to pilot out of the Maelstrom, in the famous 12 parsecs thing. Parsecs, by the way, is not a metric of time, it's a metric of distance. And anyway, so they get out with the coaxium degrading at a rate of knots. They have to get to a processing factory, which they get to in time, and that's where the hyperfuel safely transformed. The only problem is that Enfys Nest appears just as Lando takes the Millennium Falcon back out into space. Enfys Nest then reveals herself to be, in fact, a freckly young woman with curly hair. And her planet had suffered under the crime syndicates and the Empire and whatever, so she's planning, or she had planned on stealing all this coaxium to fund a rebellion. Thankfully, no one used the word hope in the resulting dialogue in this whole section, because I'm over the word hope. Anyway, Beckett decides sort of to escape instead of facing Voss, because clearly they're not going to get the coaxium off Enfys Nest and her buddies. Anyway, Voss is on the way to the planet to collect the coaxium, and Han develops his own plan. So then there's a cross and a double cross and climactic moments and all this sort of stuff, and Enfys ends up having her coaxium at the end. Voss ends up being killed by Kira. Han is duped into thinking that Kira is coming along with him, and Beckett is actually killed by Han. Chewie mainly just carries stuff in this part. Finally, Kira assumes her desired role as Vo's replacement after killing Voss, and then talks to his boss, or her boss now, who just happens to be Darth freaking Maul, back from the dead. In case you're wondering, Darth Maul was in episode 1 back in 1999 or whatever. So anyway, Kira leaves in Voss's ship. Poor old Han's broken-hearted on the beach there. No. Actually, the no doesn't happen. And then Han and Chewie track down Lando and challenge him again to a game of Sabak, where Han, wins, and he wins in a clever manner. And basically he gets the Falcon and lives happily ever after with Chewie, and they basically go off to Tatooine to work for Jabba the Hutt. So, I mean, that's the whole thing. So, as to why the movie's actually good, it just feels like a Star Wars movie. It wasn't hard. I imagine it wasn't hard to make this movie, in the fact that, well, on the surface of things, you would be going, right, we know about Han Solo, in the fact that he was from Corellia. He has a buddy called Lando. He has another buddy called Chewie. He saves Chewie from slavery somewhere. He's done the Kessel Run in a certain amount of parsecs. Kessel's a spice mining planet. Cool, we know all that stuff about him. All right, well, let's give him a love interest. Ding. A mentor figure. Ding. And some other characters and a baddie. Ding. And maybe another baddie, just to confuse things. Ding. Right. So that's it, really. There's not really a lot that you need to do there. When I was thinking about doing this review, it's not like, it's not like this is a very ambitious movie project. It's a real paint-by-numbers Star Wars movie. You've got, like, as I outlined, these very specific character roles, tropes, if you want, and the plot should be pretty straightforward. Everything should be pretty straightforward. So, I don't know why. I know why it cost so much, because they had to do the reshoots and whatever, because someone was going off script. But it's fairly, some people would say formulaic. I think it hits the right notes. There's some emotional beats in there, some good action beats. I really enjoyed the movie, and I really feel like it's a good Star Wars movie. It's a nostalgia trip. It is, and for all the people that have done their own YouTube videos on, the 2006 Easter eggs that are scattered through the movie, or how this relates to, the comic book page 43 of whatever, that's great. I'm not quite as hardcore as those people. I'm a little bit more casual as far as Star Wars goes, but I know what I enjoy in a movie, and it's a good story. It's good writing. Some people will argue that it's not good writing, but hey, everyone argues about everything as far as I'm aware. So, it told a story. It had a start, it had a finish. Even if that start and finish section was, already set up by the movies that have come before, it hit some interesting bumps along the way. It did a few things. You cared about your character. Obviously, as the movie came out initially, there was all that hoo-ha about Lando being pansexual. And, so, okay, it's just a word, and again, people couldn't be happy in the fact that the word pansexual didn't appear in the movie, but then afterwards, everything's pansexual, whatever. So it didn't really bother me, to me, Lando's Lando, and Donald Glover did a good job as Billy D. Williams, pretty much. And what was the other thing? There was some other thing that was annoying. Oh, that's right. People whinging about L3 being, this droid rights crusader. And the fact of the matter is, she's treated as a spoof, as a mockery of social justice warriors. Every time she says anything, people are rolling their eyes or whatever. She is comic relief. They're not taking her seriously. It's not Rose Tico 2.0, which as a character was treated very seriously. The Last Jedi in general was treated very seriously, but in this, it's the opposite. She's mocked and made fun of. Not necessarily saying that's bad, but it's certainly not a social justice warrior poster child. For me, the movie was really good. Actually, they managed to kill off the sort of actors that were a little bit not annoying, but sort of superfluous to the plot. They didn't hang around longer than they needed to. I think Ron Howard did a really good job. It'd be interesting to see what the Chris Miller and Phil Lord Solo would have been like. But as far as this movie goes, when I watched it the second time, I guess I was a little bit more receptive to it, because going into that midnight screening, it was like, Jesus, this is going to be, what have they done to this? Is this going to be The Last Jedi again? Or is it something different? And it is happily something different. Now, I mean, I don't like The Last Jedi. I know people who do, and they, that's up to them. That's fantastic. If they liked it, excellent. I don't. I know what I like in a Star Wars movie, and it's more of a nostalgia sort of thing. When Rian Johnson comes along and does his new trilogy in the distant future, hey, do what you like. Do what you like. It's up to you guys. And people will figure out whether they want to do it or not. As to episode 9, whenever that comes out, that will be very, very interesting to see whether the boycott that presumably happened for Solo, whether that actually will happen with the movie that it should be aimed at. But then again, at the same point in time, you've got J.J. Abrams back on directing duties, so well, it won't be The Last Jedi 2.0, hopefully. So anyway, if you haven't seen Solo in the cinemas, definitely do it. I mean, there's some great cinematic shots there, especially when they're starting in Corellia and you're getting to see Star Destroyers being made and bits and pieces of very obvious, superstructure for the Star Destroyers being lifted or moved around or welded or whatever. Yeah, that's really cool. It's a nice, fine eye for detail that I think you probably miss on a smaller screen. The Maelstrom section, that was pretty good fun. The whole thing was pretty good. I really enjoyed it. So definitely recommended from me, and hopefully, either it's more successful on Blu-ray or DVD or whatever happens afterwards, because it hasn't had a stellar run at the cinemas, and people are still arguing as to why that is specifically. So that's it for me. You should, if you've got any requests for like reviews, or even other movie reviews, I wouldn't mind doing it. And that's the thing with the channel, you've probably seen there's some Total War videos. My video card died for quite a long time there, so I'm only just getting back into it to do some streaming there. Yeah, I guess we'll see how we go. I mean, the ultimate thing for me is to get enough subscribers to actually make some money out of the channel, and there's obviously much more incentive to put up videos if, you're being financially compensated for your time, because they do take a little while to make. So that would be interesting. So if you can recommend this channel to your other friends or viewers or whatever, and like and subscribe, that would be tops. So that's it for me from 7, signing out, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.